Hi guys, how's it going? So I'm going to go through this quick stretch for the upper hip. Okay, so a lot of people don't stretch. What they do is stretch is they stretch their hamstrings. They'll do their quadriceps. They'll do stretches like this. They'll do like football stretches, I call them, where you know when you're at Sunday football, stretching your quad, stretching your hamstring. All right, but they don't really do much movement on the other sides, like up at the stretching all up to this left hand side of the hip or the right hand side of the hip. And what a stretch that I wanted to show you today, which I find very effective, is just keeping your foot out here, keeping your hand in the air. It's a quick bit of one I do in yoga quite a lot. And with that one, I just keep the foot, sit on the outer part of the foot, okay, and I keep that foot rounded there, and then I push out. I try and get that left leg quite far back, that right leg far back, sorry, and then I just push out. And I look up in the same direction. And remember, you can play around with these things as well. You can kind of move a little bit forward. You can push. You can turn around more, and you can play around. And you can move around the hip. And even just me doing that there, I can feel it pulling in bits that I've not even moved in that position myself very often. And you'll find yourself actually learning to understand that your hip is supposed, your spine's supposed to move in these directions, forward and back. It's supposed to round. You're supposed to be able to move your spine in each section of your spine, so the lower part of your spine, mid and upper part of your spine. You're supposed to move these things, where a lot of people don't. They kind of just use the whole, they move the whole back. They don't really learn to use their hip rotations. They don't learn to use their upper back to rotate, and then that causes a little bit of tension, and you don't really get that moving pattern anymore. Everything stiffens up. So by using and understanding the hip, which as you know is the ball and socket joints of your femurs, your front of your top of your leg here, inside the hip, you need to actually learn to use that correctly and start learning to stretch all different motions. And that's why I do prefer yoga and things like that when I do a lot of stretching, because it does give you that pattern of different movements and different stretches, as opposed to some mobility is great, but sometimes people get into a pattern with mobility. They just keep stretching the same poses or same stretches, as like they'll just do hip flexors in here, as you can see, pretty unflexible, but stretching hip flexors and stuff, which is great, but like as I said, you're really only kind of focusing on this section here, but you're missing sections all around the hip, even like the lower abdominals. And with a lot of these kind of yoga poses and things like that, they really help kind of get that that perfect motion and helps you, especially if you're someone who wants to keep moving, keep sprinting, keep rotating. Because you know, if you go into a sport where you might do a sprint or turn, or even just like playing around and playing around with friends or dropping down and picking things up, you have to be mobile for that. And when you're a young kid, that's fine, but as you get older, you stiffen up a lot, and you know, you don't want to be like 35 years old, super stiff. You bend over to pick a ball up and you do your back an injury because you're so tight all the way up the right hand side, the left hand side of the hip. So that's the kind of motions. Remember that even though it's one stretch, you can try and move your spine in different directions in that stretch, so you get different parts of the hip you're stretching. Find where you maybe feel more tension, and then just double down on that area. And that's probably what you can probably notice a lot different when you actually come out of those stretches. It'll probably even help you even more than doing a lot of these basic mobility stretches, even though they are great, but you want to kind of put them together and use both.